and I'm a recovered addict. I've been continuously clean and sober since March 21st, 2004, and I stay close to God on a daily basis. As Kel said, my home group, it is an AA fellowship, so I'm not running afoul of traditions by mentioning that, but it's called Purpose of this Book, and it's not really a meeting, it's really just a deep dive into the big book, and Kel's got a link to we record it as a podcast if you like studying the book like the way that I do, and Kel, maybe if you want to share that, again, if it's not running afoul of traditions. Otherwise, anybody feel free to text me on WhatsApp, and I'm happy to send you the link. And I'll say this before I get too far in, I have notoriously bad internet. I'm not actually from Chicago. I'm from a tiny little town called Sandwich, Illinois. It's about 70 miles west of Chicago. It's a little farm town, and there's just no good internet out here. But fortunately, one of my best buddies, David Glasgow, is here too, and he's heard me speak about 1,000 times. So he'll just fill in if my internet goes out for a minute, and we won't even miss a beat. So, man, what an honor to be able to speak at a meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. I went to my first meeting of CA, I believe about my 10th day in recovery, so it would have been right around March 31st of 2004. I had gone to some Narcotics Anonymous meetings, and I'd gone to some AA meetings. It was good, but man, when I went to my first meeting at CA, I was like, oh, I think I finally found the spot. I was about 30, almost 31 years old, and there was people in there that looked like, the book talks about were people that wouldn't normally mix. I walked into CA and I saw a lot of people that I probably would have mixed with. We were all junkies, that we were all out of control when it came to cocaine and everything else that we were doing in our lives, and CA was a really important part of my recovery right from the beginning. And I did get clean and sober in downtown Chicago, and there were some really powerful CA meetings down there. Out here in the sticks, there's not as many, but God, what a blessing Zoom has been, because I got all you people. I mean, what is there, 30, 45 of us here, all, recovering or recovered from this hopeless condition of mind and body. And so I asked, that we could read those first couple paragraphs from chapter 7, because for me, I don't ever tire of talking about how important it is for us to carry the message. Right? If we look at the 12 steps, that first step is our problem statement. We admitted we were powerless over cocaine and other mind-altering substances. The powerlessness is, my physical reaction, my allergic reaction where I break out in craving as soon as I put coke or other things in my body. And also the mental powerlessness that when I stop, and I stopped many times, but I was totally unable to stay stopped. I'm powerless physically and mentally over my cocaine addiction, right? And then the part that comes after the dash, that our lives have become unmanageable, right? So that I'm so restless, irritable, and discontented. I've got this unmanageability, which is really my spiritual illness, my spiritual malady. And so if that's my problem, then I'm really spiritually ill, and I'm powerless mentally and physically, I got to look to what the culmination is, our solution. And it's that 12th step. I get out of 1 by having a spiritual awakening in 12, or it was sort of resulting through the work, but it's not because of 12, it's because of all the work along the way. But it tells me that as the result, the singular result of working these steps, I'm going to have a spiritual awakening. And then what do I do with that spiritual awakening? Well, then I carry this message to other addicts on practice these principles in all my affairs. But I really want to focus on that middle part, to carrying this message to other addicts. What's the message that needs to be carried to them? It's that they too can have a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. If you're like me, that you suffer physically, mentally, and spiritually, I'm carrying a message of hope. And I started thinking about this a few months ago. I don't know exactly why, but I was reading the book one day, or maybe I was listening to a speaker, and someone was talking about how we help each other, sort of one addict at a time. That people are sick and suffering, and we need to carry the message to them. So I started playing around with the math a little bit, and I was like, okay, well, I've been clean and sober in about 18 and a half years, and, I've sponsored a bunch of people on and off, and I'm sponsoring maybe about a half dozen, 6, 7 people right now. What can the impact of that be if I'm properly carrying the message? So I arrived at doing a little bit of arithmetic. I'm not going to say it's grade school, it's maybe middle school math. Do you guys remember exponents? So you do like 3 to the 15th power, which means 3 times 3 times 3, 15 times, right? So it occurred to me, if all I did over the entire course of my recovery was to carry the message correctly to 3 people, and I made sure that I put them in a position that they knew how to carry the message. And when I say carry the message, I don't mean just come up here and talk at you guys. I mean, this is, I guess carrying the message, but it's just a touch of it. When I'm talking about carrying the message, I'm talking about sitting down with someone, taking them to the steps so they take the steps, helping them through the work, hearing that 5, helping them with 8 and 9, all the work so that they have a spiritual awakening. So if I only do that with 3 people, and I set those 3 people up so that they can each do it only 3 times themselves, and they're equipped, you do that 3 times 3 times 3, 15 times down the road. You guys even want to guess how many people that is? 14,348,907 people. Let this sink in, guys. Our sister fellowship, AA, says they've got a membership of about 2 million people. I don't know if that's right or not. And CA, we're not as old, guys. We haven't been around as long. I don't think we have that many people. But let's say we did. Anyone here want to bet that there's more than 2 million people out there that need our help? All right. We know this anecdotally. There's a lot of sick people out there. So what I'm saying is if I'm doing my work the right way, and I work with only 3 sponsees and get them geared up the right way, starting from me, we can reach 14,348,907 people. Guys, take that math. There's 49 of us here today. I have to use a calculator because I'm not that strong at math. If each of us does this and carried the message to 3 people, we could reach 703,096,443 people. I'll bet if we reached 703 million people, we'd reach every struggling addict on this planet, because it'd be about 1/10 of the population that needs our help. Don't ever tell me we don't have the power and the reach and the scope to help every person who needs help. So how do we help them? Right? Well, here's what's told to me in this step. Here's the promise, and here's the facts out of their experience. They say the practical experience, the experience of that first 100, shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. And yeah, I don't want to drink or drug today. But what it's really telling me is practical experience shows that nothing so much is going to keep me closer to God than intensive work with other alcoholics. Because if I am acting out in service, it means I'm recovered because I did my own program work. I'm working with other people. I'm acting in the second legacy, which is unity. And I'm being of service. I'm helping somebody else. I'm not going to have time to sit in my own garbage, guys. Right? So if I work with a lot of other people intensely, and it doesn't mean working with my sponsor, who, by the way, lives 2 doors down in this tiny little farm town, and he moved in here a couple of years ago, and how convenient it is. Like, I love easier, softer still, don't get me wrong. So having a sponsor that's 100 feet away from me is the easier, softer way. I recommend it if you can do that, right? But importantly here, if I work intensively with other alcoholics, I'm going to stay so on the beam. This is our 12th suggestion. And guys, Bill is using some mild language here, like this is a suggestion. Let me be very clear about this. The 12th step is not an option. As I look at you here, those of you on camera, and if you're not on camera, if you can come on greedily, selfishly, I would love to see all your beautiful faces as well. If you can. I know it's evening where you are, and so we're reminding your kids and stuff. But let me be clear. The 12th step is not an option. I and you don't get to take from our sponsors and from everybody else in the meetings and then decide we're not going to give it back. That is decidedly not how this works. The 12th step, it might say here, is a suggestion. The 12th step is a requirement. I must. When I came in, guys, I'm sure like so many of you, my cup was so empty, right? I had this cup. There was nothing in it. And I held it out to you guys, and I said, please help me. Please fill this cup up. And you guys filled my cup. One of you sponsored me. Some of you, the others, befriended me and gave me rides to meetings and called me when I wasn't around and took me to dinner, and we had coffee, and you did all these things. You gave and you gave and you gave, and I took and I took and I took. And then what happens is I worked through those steps, and that cup that I brought with me, it started to get pretty full because of everything you'd given to me. So then what did I need to do? I had to make the shift, guys. I had to make the shift from selfishness, right, from self-centeredness to selflessness and other-centeredness. All of a sudden, I had to start pouring out that full cup to everybody else who needed it. And that's what's being talked about in the 12th step here. I don't get to keep taking. If I come into recovery and I get all I need from you guys, and then I don't turn around and pour it back out, I'm not getting rid of that selfishness that the book tells me I must get rid of or it kills me. So there's a duality here, right? The duality is by me working with God to get rid of my selfishness and working with others and carrying the message and taking people through the steps so they can take the steps, I get what I need by giving it away. And I know we've heard that slogan a million times, right, in meetings, but it is so true. And it's so perfect for someone who's so inherently selfish as me. But here's what it goes on to say as well. You can help when no one else can. Nobody understands us addicts except other addicts. Any of you guys ever had this experience? 9 years ago, I had to go in for back surgery. I'd been sober about 10 years at the time. The pain was debilitating. And the night before, I was in so much agony. And the doctor who was going to operate on me the next day said, "Why don't you let us hook you up to a morphine drip?" And I said, "Doc, I told you, I'm a recovered addict. I cannot have morphine." And he said, "It's okay. I'm your doctor. I'm giving you permission." I said, "Doc, are you going to give me permission to stop smoking crack in 3 weeks after I get out of here?" Right? And I'm nobody's physician here. We all have to take medications sometimes. I had to take Norcos for a few days afterwards. I took the least amount I could. I didn't get high. It was wonderful, right? Sometimes we got to do these things. Otherwise, we might die. Right? I'm not anybody's physician here. Do not hear me say, don't take meds when prescribed by a doctor. But what I am saying is my doctor who did years of medical school and had thousands of patients didn't fundamentally understand his patient that was an addict. That he cannot give me permission to use drugs or other any kind of drugs safely. No one understands us like we understand each other. And we can secure the confidence of other addicts, right, where other people fail. And we got to remember here, what does it say? Remember, they are very ill. People who have not recovered from this hopeless condition of mind, body, and spirit, they have sick minds. Right? And it's very difficult to get through to a sick mind. And what's the first thing we're supposed to do? If you look at the stories here, you know, like when Bill and Bob went to talk to Bill D and some of these other early AA members, you know, and Fred's story and the Jim story, every time they went to see someone who was struggling, they always went and built rapport first. They'd go see him on the first day, just like Bill did with Dr. Bob Smith, and said, "Let me tell you about my drinking." Bill didn't go to see Bob and try to say, "I've got a solution and a cure for you." He went in and said, "I'm going to tell you about my drinking." And they did this consistently. And they'd go back the second day and they'd do more rapport building. And then if the prospect they were talking to says, "Yeah, you sound like me. How is it that you guys aren't drinking and drugging?" Then they started to talk to them about what they knew about the disease and the solution from it. Right? This is why we can relate to other suffering addicts like nobody else can. And how about this? This is littered with promises. As a result of working with others, the next paragraph starts, "Life will take on new meaning." That's a promise right there, guys. To watch people recover, to see them help others. Remember 3 times 3 times 3, etc. To watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow out about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. I'm very blessed right now of all the people that I'm sponsoring locally here in my community. Most of them, not all of them, are very into the book and you know, tried and true big book recovery. And I say most because some people are sicker than others, some want it more. And so every Sunday morning at 8 a.m., I get together with all my sponsees at one of the fellowship club about a half an hour from here. And now they're bringing their sponsees. And some of those sponsees are bringing sponsees. So now, again, starting from me, and I don't say this, I'm just doing the same thing that we're all supposed to be doing. I'm not doing anything special. I'm just one addict who's trying to stay close to God and to save his ass every day by helping other people. But what started with me sitting down with my sponsees, now they've got their sponsees in there, and their sponsees, I'm literally seeing that 3 times 3 times 3 forming up as a fellowship right before my very eyes. There's 15 of us the last couple of weekends all studying together. And I think those sponsees are starting to get more, so pretty soon we're going to outgrow that room. And how cool is that? And I'm not the grand poobah. I'm not the guru, like Joe and Charlie says. All I'm doing is saying, hey, let's talk about the steps every 12 weeks. Let's go through them again, 1 through 12, 1 through 12 in rotation. And the beauty of this, too, is now those sponsees who've been doing this for a while, they're chiming in. So it's just not me sitting up there talking at the group. We're having a discussion. We're all getting better together. I'm seeing this fellowship grow up about me, and it's fantastic. And it goes on to say, we know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. I'm so grateful that I found God as I understand him, that I did the work, and I work hard to stay close to him. No question. But very little is more meaningful to me than the relationships I've got in the fellowship. I love going to my local meetings here that I go to every week. We have a Saturday morning discussion group that is about 50, 60 strong, and I've never been a part of it. I've been to many, many meetings. I've been clean and sober, 18 and a half years, guys. Never consistently been to a discussion meeting that is so focused on the real problem and the real solution to a person. It's so powerful. I'm so lucky to have that. And then we have our Thursday night, Big Book deep dive that I mentioned at the beginning that me and David and a couple other people do a panel study around. But that's a group. It's about 25 or 30 strong. And every week we're in there studying together. Like that fellowship is so important. And it can be a real saving grace for people that are new as well. Let me keep my eye on the time here. Okay, I'm doing okay. Because it's so easy to cling to that fellowship, right? To want to be a part of it. People start to get clean and sober on the fellowship. I've seen it happen. That was my experience at the beginning. We come from sort of don't drink, don't use, and go to meetings where we're white knuckling it because we're holding on so hard, to the fellowship propping us up, to the pink cloud of the, oh my God, I haven't drank or drugged for 30 days. But then it gets dangerous, right? Because if I try to just rely on the fellowship to get me right long term, my experience, it doesn't work out so well. At some point, I got to work all of these steps. I came in because I was looking for help from a group of people who weren't drinking and drugging anymore. And what they offered to me was not a solution, not a set of tactics so that I wouldn't drink or drug anymore. That's not what we're doing here in CA. What was offered to me was a course of steps I could take to get to God as I understood him. And he was going to solve all my problems, right? And God bless that he was able to do that. So even though I can come in and I can be a part of and I have this great loving fellowship, I still have to do the work to get to God because he's really the one that's going to save my ass. God can do for me what I was never able to do for myself and what no other human power can do for myself. If we were all in a room and I would desperately wanted to drink or drug, there's 50 you people, you might be able to hold me down for a while, right? But I'm slippery and I'll get out of your grasp and I can drink or drug if I set my mind to it. But here's the beauty of it. I don't ever feel like drinking or drugging because God's got me and God is not going to plant the seed in my head. And I got to remember, I got to stay vigilant, right? I may be recovered from this hopeless condition of mind and body, guys. I'm still an addict. I had crazy dreams last night. I'm getting over the flu and I'm taking antibiotics, erythromycin, and I took 2 yesterday by mistake, and one of that screwed up my head. I had a dream that I used cocaine. My buddy David, who was here, was in the dream with me. I had to text him first thing in the morning. We both relapsed together in the dream. Because why do I always, when I have a drinking or drugging dream, why do I always use? Because I'm an addict. That's what I do. Right? But because I've had 18 and a half years of staying close to God and staying close to you guys, I haven't done it in real life. And by the way, I told David when he called me this morning after I texted him that, I said, the worst part of the dream is that you gave me some really stepped on shit. Right? At least if I was going to get high in a dream, it should feel good. So guys, I want to wrap up here because I want to be able to turn the floor over to all of you. Understand why, remember why you came in. The next time a newcomer comes in, whether it's in person or in Zoom, remember why they're there. They're not looking for God. They're not looking for a spiritual solution. They are looking for tactics and techniques how they cannot drink or drug. And you can hear that. We can hear that. We can accept that. But we have to build the rapport. But then we have to explain that first step. They got to understand the physical and the mental powerlessness that's talked about in Roman numerals 28, 29 in the doctor's opinion. They have to understand the spiritual malady, the spiritual illness that's nicely described in the bedevilments on page 52. And if they agree, yeah, they feel that way, that's how they exist, then we got to start to give them the preview, which is step 2, right? Which is that, am I willing to believe that there's something out there that's bigger than me that can save my ass? And then we got to tell them the whole story. That, listen, we don't have a system for you to stop drinking and drugging, but we do have a system for you to get to God as you understand him. He's going to take care of that problem for you. And it comes back to that in the 10-step promises. I'm not going to go all askance there. But if I work all these steps, by the time I get to the 10th step, that drug problem, the coke, the pills, the weed, the heroin, the alcohol, whatever it was that brought me in here in the first place, if I do all that work from 1 through 10 thoroughly and honestly, God is going to make sure that I'm neutral, that I'm not going to be interested in cocaine and I'm not going to be not interested. It's just not an issue for me. And so if we can grab that newcomer, just help them understand the basics and say, stick around, white knuckle it for a few days. You're going to start having this spiritual experience, which, by the way, doesn't happen at 12. It broadens starting in step 2. 4 times on pages 45 to 46, it says, if I'm just willing to believe a little bit, if I lay aside some prejudice, I'll start to get better. Starting to get better means starting to have that spiritual awakening. And then I do 3, and then I do 4. 4 is like this in terms of the spiritual awakening, if I do it thoroughly and honestly. And then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. By the time I'm in 9, in my experience, I'm pretty spiritually awakened. And then I got to keep doing those amends. And then really living the disciplines of 10, 11, and 12, which is really a rehash and a reworking of the first 9 steps on a daily basis, plus carrying this message to those other struggling addicts. Remember, guys, starting from each of you, 3 people, if that's all you ever do, that happens 15 times down the road, 14,348,907 people can get the right message. And times 50 was 703 plus million. Thanks for letting me share, guys. Such a blessing and an honor to be here.